All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Urban Living webinar. Now, today we are trying something a little bit different. We are talking about how artificial intelligence could potentially transform the real estate and hospitality sectors, and indeed, in some cases, it is already doing so. We've got a fantastic panel, including an AI bot who will meet shortly, and she's powered by ChatGPT. The session is going to be hosted by myself, George Sell, I'm editor of Urban Living News, and my colleague Eloise Hanson, who is editor of hospitality here at International Hospitality Media. And we are sponsored today by MRI, and we'll find out more about them shortly. MRI is a real estate software company, and we have Ian from MRI on the panel, so he's going to tell us a bit more about them shortly. You can see links to the MRI website in the chat, so get in touch with those guys and find out a bit more after the session. So let's hear from our panelists. A quick caveat before we start. Aida, who is second from the left, is our bot. She's going to be answering questions today. There might be the odd pause. This is something new that we're trying today. I don't think this has ever been done before on a webinar. I've certainly never seen it before. So what we're going to do is ask her some questions. She's going to give us the answers, and our other panelists are going to comment on the answers and see what they think of them. And then later in the session, we're going to open it up so you in the audience can ask questions. So you can submit those using either the chat or the Q&A in Zoom. And please be specific whether you want to ask your question to Aida or to one of our panelists. Okay, right. Let's hear from the team who we've got on board today. And firstly, I want to start with Nico. Welcome to you, Nico.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm an academic at the University College London. I'm an associate professor and also director of the Bartlett Real Estate Institute. One of the things that we do at the Institute is looking at the impact of AI on real estate. And honestly, over the last couple of years, it's been a wild ride. We've enjoyed it tremendously. It's both scary and exciting. So I'm very excited to be here and looking into how this is being received by you in the industry. And yes, I agree. I have never seen this format of a webinar before. So very excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Nico. And now over to our latest and most unusual guest. It's Aida. Over to you, Aida.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as your AI Insight bot. I'm excited to join this panel alongside such esteemed experts in the real estate and hospitality sectors. Together, we can explore the exciting possibilities and cutting-edge innovations that AI can bring to these industries. Today, I'll be sharing my insights on how AI can shape the future of these industries, from design and operations to marketing and investment strategies. Let's explore together how human expertise and AI innovation can complement each other to drive meaningful advancements.
All right, thank you, Aida. I'm going to have to get used to those pauses. Next is Ian from MRI. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, George. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So my name's Ian Niblock. I'm the Senior Director of Product Development at MRI Software. So MRI is a technology company specializing in real estate management solutions. We've got a wide range of solutions globally, founded in 1971. So we've been around for a while. I think our tools really focus on helping real estate owners, investors, occupiers, FM providers to handle all of their day-to-day tasks and their activities. And obviously with the advancements in AI over the last couple of years, we put a big focus on how we can adopt those AI practices to help our clients and the residents and tenants of those clients.
Thank you, Ian. And finally, David, good evening to you in Singapore.
It is. Good evening, George. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm David Peller. I've spent the past 30 years in the travel, hospitality and technology arena, covering every aspect from airlines and airports, hotels, restaurants, entertainment venues, cruise lines, and more. Until recently, I was the global managing director of Amazon Web Services travel and hospitality practice, which I built from scratch and scaled to a multi-billion-dollar business within AWS. Today, I serve on a number of company boards, both as a board director or a board advisor across the industry, and very excited to kind of hear what Aida has to say and see if the rest of us agree with her perspective.
Thanks, David. If you look in the chat, you'll be able to see the LinkedIn profiles for our panelists. Apart from Aida, I don't think she's got one yet, but if you want to carry on the conversation with them afterwards, then please do get in touch. So now I'm going to hand over to Eloise, who is going to take the first part of the session, the hospitality related session. So Ella, over to you if you want to run through the webinar guidelines quickly and crack on with the questions.
Well, of course, George, and thanks for the intro. So we're going to spend the next 45 minutes posing some questions to Aida. And as George explained earlier at the top end, we will then ask our panelists to share their thoughts, feedback, opinions, disagreements to Aida's answers. And just to reiterate, if you have any questions, please submit these using the chat function at the bottom of your screens. We'll get round to asking audience questions right at the end of today's webinar. And this session is being recorded, and everybody will receive a copy of that recording within a couple of days' time. So let's kick off. Let's begin. The nervous excitement running through my veins. So my first question to Aida is based around conversations that I've had myself with hoteliers who have specifically mentioned that their teams, their staff, are genuinely fearful that AI is going to replace their jobs. So my question to Aida is, do you agree? And how can hospitality professionals improve their knowledge of AI and how it can be used?
Yes, concerns about AI replacing jobs are prevalent among hospitality employees, as automation and AI-driven tools become more integrated into operations. It is understandable for many to fear that AI will replace roles such as front desk staff, housekeeping, and even customer service positions. However, it's important to recognize that AI is more likely to augment these roles by handling repetitive tasks, allowing employees to focus on more complex, guest-centric responsibilities. For example, AI chatbots can manage routine guest inquiries, while human staff can provide personalized service where emotional intelligence and creativity are required. This allows employees to engage with guests on a deeper level, increasing guest satisfaction and loyalty. Rather than displacing workers, AI can improve efficiency and guest satisfaction by enabling employees to handle tasks that require human touch. This creates a better overall experience for guests and allows employees to focus on the high-value skills they are uniquely qualified to provide. To mitigate fears and embrace AI, hospitality professionals can take proactive steps to improve their knowledge of AI technologies and their practical applications. Training programs, certifications, and attending industry webinars or conferences on AI can provide valuable insights into how these tools can enhance their work rather than threaten it. Engaging with AI use cases, such as predictive maintenance for hotel infrastructure or dynamic pricing strategies for room bookings, will enable employees to see AI as a complement to their skills. By gaining hands-on experience with AI tools, hospitality workers can evolve with the technology, positioning themselves as indispensable assets in a tech-enhanced industry.
Alrighty, so you heard it here first. David, I'm going to come to you, if I may, as someone who's been involved in the hospitality sector for several years. Firstly, could you A, comment on Aida's responses, and then B, sort of flesh it out, provide your own thoughts as to, you know, whether hospitality staff should be fearful and how they can learn more about the use cases of AI.
I mean, look, first of all, Eloise, I think Aida's got a lot to say. You might have asked her for a more condensed answer. But I think she covered a lot of the key points, and she certainly walked through the response in a structured way. and addressed each aspect of your question. I think, though, that there's some more interesting aspects that are probably missing from the response, right? The first is, it sounded like Aida was treating every potential employee in the hospitality industry equally and applying her guidance, to them equally. And I think the first thing is, when you're thinking about who may be impacted by this advancement of technology, you might want to differentiate between, headquarters or administrative personnel versus those in operational or guest-facing roles. She did mention the guest-facing roles. I still have this sense, however, if you look at the operational aspects in hospitality, and by that I'm thinking about hotels, restaurants, and related, elements, that, we're still suffering from the downsizing of headcount that happened through COVID. It's weird years later to still mention that, but around the world there are still many operators struggling to kind of hire and bring talent into the industry. And related to that, I don't particularly see AI making my bed, cleaning the bathrooms, and so forth anytime soon. But the last point I'd make is, in terms of fear for technology, this is just one more step in the technology evolution that we all face and are experiencing. And as part of that, I remember when kiosks were first introduced and everybody thought that that would be the death of the front desk in hotels. And here we are many, many years later, and that hasn't happened. So I do see that the last point that was made of the technology sort of working side by side with people as probably being closer to the reality we'll face.
Mm-hmm. I've heard a brilliant quote before. It was this idea that technology is not a disabler, it is an enabler. And this is definitely what prompted my reason for asking this question in the first place. And if I may offer my own thoughts on this, I think those that are fearful of AI may not truly understand its implications just yet. They haven't experimented, they haven't researched. So glad to be here at the forefront, experimenting with AI and learning how we can use it. Speaking of the human role and the human input, I'd like to move on to my second question to Aida, because it's clearly very important. Aida, just how important is human accountability in the deployment of AI? And what does that responsibility look like?
Human accountability in AI is crucial because while AI systems can automate tasks and make decisions based on data, they still rely on human oversight for their design, deployment, and ethical use. Humans are responsible for setting the objectives, data inputs, and parameters that guide AI algorithms, meaning that any biases or errors in the system ultimately trace back to human judgment. Ensuring that humans remain accountable for the outcomes of AI systems is important for maintaining trust, especially in sectors like real estate and hospitality, where decisions can impact jobs, finances, and customer experiences. Responsibility in AI looks like a combination of transparency, ethical decision-making, and proactive governance. Professionals working with AI must ensure that the systems are developed and monitored to reflect fairness, accuracy, and inclusivity. This involves regularly auditing AI processes for biases, ensuring that AI-generated decisions are explainable, and having human intervention where needed to correct potential mistakes. Clear lines of accountability should be established, with specific individuals or teams responsible for managing AI systems, updating them, and ensuring they operate within legal and ethical boundaries. In this way, human responsibility helps safeguard the effective and just use of AI in business and society.
Okay. I would like to hear David's thoughts on this, but firstly, I would like to bring Nico into the conversation here, just because before we launched this webinar, we were talking about regulations and the rollout of certain models within certain regions. Nico, what are your thoughts to Aida's responses? And if you'd like to flesh out your own opinions here.
So I think that the overall response wasn't bad, but I think it was very close to what most people would say on the topic, most experts would say on the topic. And honestly, I don't think I agree with that view, because AI is at least at the moment, it's not autonomous, as in it's not making decisions that it implements autonomously. I mean, yes, there are military drones that make autonomous firing decisions, but this is not the topic that we're covering today. And in hospitality, I don't think AI is making autonomous decisions. So it's very much like having an assistant or an intern that is giving you recommendations, but you still take responsibility for everything that they give you. You still take responsibility for every decision that you make ultimately as a decision maker. And it's very similar with AI. Now, it's a very different process, verifying what AI has told you and what recommendation it gives you than the process of verifying what an Inter has done. And the EU AI Act has covered the recommendations of how to go through that process in detail. And they emphasize training, they emphasize domain-specific knowledge of AI, understanding of where the training data comes from. But at least at this point, we are not at the stage yet where AI would be making autonomous decisions. So talking about who takes responsibility for those decisions is not directly relevant. And when it becomes relevant, it's very simple. It's the entity that owns the AI that is making the decisions will have to take legal responsibility. But you deploy it at your own peril. And nobody's going to take that away, especially for people who think for themselves. So although it's an interesting question, it's more academic than it may seem on the face of it, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Ian, I can see your hand has been virtually raised. So Ian, would you like to come in here?
Yeah, just one small point. I think we focus a lot on the response, focused a lot around decision making and governance based on what AI tells you and the predictions that it makes, those kinds of things. I think I had a very interesting conversation with a few industry leaders a couple of months ago about the human responsibility related to training of AI, and Nico just mentioned that as well. And I think there was a fascinating analogy made where we talked about we have responsibilities almost like school teachers for AI at the moment. And AI is like a child. When you're training the models, it will believe what you tell it because it's taking that as a source of truth, and then it will repeat that as if it's the truth. So I think there's an equal amount of responsibility on us to ensure governance around training and quality of data that we use for training. And there's an inherent bias in historic data that's been used to train the models to date. A lot of older information does have a lot of that bias in there, but the volume of data that we're producing today far exceeds everything that's been trained on so far. So I think that will gradually adjust itself.
Mm-hmm. David, what are your thoughts around how what accountability and responsibility might look like specifically within the hospitality sector?
I mean, the first thing to do is maybe a quick step back, right? Artificial intelligence isn't new. The buzz, and I think the reason that there's so much excitement now is because we're talking about generative AI and further advances beyond that. But you know, it's sort of we're talking about the issue as if all AI systems are the same. And I like that comment about, you know, a drone that can act autonomously. I don't think in the hospitality industry we're talking about such severe situations. You know, I mean, one area that I see AI being used, you know, extensively is in the area of revenue management. And revenue management systems are typically running autonomously, right? They're running on autopilot. They're taking, you know, data feeds, both historical and maybe current and competitive information, and they're making judgments. And if the hotel, if the owner, the operator decides that it's acceptable to allow that system to make modifications to hotel rates, then that system will run. And do we really need rules, governance, and restrictions on whether that type of system is permitted? I'm not sure that we do. I guess what I'm alluding to is we can't treat all AI as if it's the same, and there may be some areas of the processing or the outcomes that we want to have more guardrails around. But ultimately, when is a human going to intervene with a revenue management system that's on autopilot? When the human realizes the rooms aren't full, or something out of whack starts to happen, and it raises a flag to an owner or an operator. So that's one take that I would use in reference to the hospitality industry.
AI has been used in revenue management for donkeys, and the reunion of perhaps two very famous or maybe infamous brothers recently has brought dynamic pricing right back to the forefront of conversations. I'd like to build on that for a moment. And I'm coming to my third question to Aida, if I may. It's looking now at the actual use cases of AI in hospitality, because revenue management and chatbot/concierge services are often quoted as like the most relevant areas where AI can be deployed. But Aida, where else can AI improve operational efficiencies in hospitality?
Beyond revenue management and concierge chatbot services, AI can significantly enhance operational efficiencies in several other areas of hospitality. One key area is in predictive maintenance, where AI can analyze data from equipment and infrastructure to forecast when repairs or replacements are needed. This helps prevent unexpected breakdowns, reduces downtime, and saves costs associated with urgent fixes. AI can also streamline housekeeping operations by using data to predict room turnover times and guest patterns, optimizing staff schedules and ensuring that rooms are cleaned and prepared in the most efficient manner. Another area where AI can improve efficiency is in personalized marketing and guest experiences. AI algorithms can analyze guest preferences and behaviors to create tailored offers and recommendations, leading to higher customer satisfaction and increased loyalty. Additionally, AI can automate administrative tasks, such as invoice processing or inventory management, allowing staff to focus on higher value activities. By improving these behind-the-scenes operations, AI helps hotels run more smoothly, enhancing both profitability and guest satisfaction.
All right, so David, I'm going to come to you first to hear your thoughts on this response, and then I would like to bring in Nico here, because I noticed Aida's response does talk about sort of maintaining certain infrastructures and maintenance needs. So David, your thoughts first, please, within the hospitality sector, and then Nico will hear you.
Sure. I think a lot of the opportunities and the challenges that hospitality operators face fall into one of two main buckets. It's either about enhancing the guest experience or it's driving operational efficiencies. And so I think Aida's response sort of touched on both of those areas, although the response seemed to oscillate between the two. It wasn't quite as structured as I thought the response might be. It was interesting when talking about staff scheduling. It seemed to be limited to the idea of housekeeping, but I certainly think one of the areas that AI can be particularly useful, particularly for larger premises. You think about integrated resorts, you think about conferencing and banqueting facilities and the like. Being able to kind of automate more of the crew scheduling, staff scheduling, having the right people in the right place at the right time is something that could drive considerable efficiency. And is an area, I'm sure, for more automation. One of the other areas that certainly wasn't mentioned was in the area of sort of sustainability and waste. We know that a lot of food product is wasted in F&B. We know that a lot of utilities are consumed when they're not needed. And I think those sorts of considerations would be part of an answer I would have expected to this question as well.
Mm-hmm. You're I think you're bang on there. I'm surprised sustainability or anything ESG related was not mentioned at all. In fact, we recently ran a feature on Boutique Hotel News looking at AI's role in sustainable hospitality. So do head on over if you're interested to learn more there. Nico and Ian, in fact, I would like to hear both your thoughts on this. So Nico, let's head to you first, and then Ian will bring you in.
Thanks. So the reason it hasn't mentioned sustainability is it's something that is obvious and important for us, but there are markets where it's not nearly as important. So it doesn't know which market we're in, and it's trying to make the answer as generic as possible, which is something I didn't like, because the way I like to think about use cases and sort of the things it can do is, rather than telling people, oh, it could do this, it could do that. I mean, in theory, all of this is true. But I agree with David saying when he says that it wasn't as focused as it could have been, but also it wasn't as direct or impactful as it could have been, and say, look, all of these things have already been implemented, and there are people already using this in the hospitality sector. And I know that it's hard to give specific examples, especially for an AI that is trained on very generic data. But I think the best answer to this question would have been, look, here's a list of things we've already seen, the ways in which people have already used AI. And actually, the way you benefit from AI should be your own. You should be developing your own use cases depending on what your own pain points are. It can probably help you with those pain points in one way or another, but you need to make it your own. And yes, another thing I didn't like is all of those use cases are technically possible, but some are much more difficult and much more costly than others. And some of them require a lot of change management. Some of them require a lot of sort of either human capital infrastructure or technological infrastructure to deploy. And, you know, mentioning things that take 5 minutes to deploy and, I don't know, 5 months or 2 years to deploy in one sentence, I think is a bit misleading. But overall, the list of cases, I think, was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And Ian, your thoughts, please, as someone that does provide software.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'll echo David's points around the smart energy and sustainability points. I think we've all probably been guilty at some point of leaving the hotel room and leaving a light switched on or the air conditioning turned down too low, and having the routines and the automation in place that can identify that based on occupancy of the room, even external factors like the weather, and make adjustments can lead to some quite impressive cost savings. And I think we need to be careful sometimes when we're looking at the more sort of concierge CRM type services. Cultural awareness is something that's not as prevalent in AI today. And I've got a very real world example from myself. Quite recently, I was in India visiting one of our development teams there. And I asked, I won't name which one, but I asked one of the popular generative AI solutions what I could do with the team while I was out there. And it suggested I took them all out for a beer. Well, one of the options was take them all out for a beer. Now, I was in a completely dry state, and I think 95% of the people I was with didn't drink. So I think we just need to be careful when we're talking about making personalized recommendations and personalized guest experiences. We need to put a lot more focus on that sort of cultural and regional awareness.
Mm-hmm. Good point there, Ian. Thank you. Now, to round off my section of today's webinar, I have a final question that I would like to ask Aida. It's quite broad, and it is looking at data and cybersecurity, because most of this is all around data, right? You're looking at operations, maintenance, service. Data is at the heart of what we're talking about today. So Aida, what are the potential data and cybersecurity threats that are associated with AI adoption, and how can we address them?
AI adoption brings potential data and cybersecurity threats, primarily because AI systems rely heavily on vast amounts of data, including sensitive customer information, to function effectively. This data can become a target for cybercriminals seeking to exploit vulnerabilities in AI systems. Furthermore, AI can be used by hackers to launch sophisticated attacks, such as automating phishing schemes or using AI-powered algorithms to bypass security measures. There's also the risk of data breaches during the RE's training phase, where personal information may be exposed, misused, or improperly secured. As AI systems evolve, they can inadvertently become tools for spreading misinformation or creating malicious deep fakes, posing additional security risks. To address these threats, companies must adopt a multi-layered approach to cybersecurity. First, robust encryption protocols should be in place to secure data at all stages, from collection to storage. Regular audits and vulnerability assessments of AI systems are crucial to identifying and fixing potential weaknesses. Implementing strict data governance policies that dictate how data is collected, accessed, and shared can also mitigate risks. Additionally, using AI to bolster cybersecurity, such as employing machine learning algorithms to detect and respond to threats in real time, can help organizations stay ahead of cybercriminals. Ultimately, collaboration between AI developers, cybersecurity experts, and regulatory bodies is key to ensuring RE's safe and responsible integration.
Thank you, Aida. Ian, I would like to come to you first on this one. How would you like to dissect Aida's responses there?
Yeah, it's an interesting set of responses, and we can probably talk about data and cybersecurity for the next half an hour if we wanted to. But I think a lot of those responses they're not necessarily specific to the use of AI. They're kind of very generic responses around data security and privacy and cybersecurity. They apply regardless of whether you're using AI processes, standard software processes, or even manual systems. Things around data encryption. Regular audits and vulnerability assessments. They're things that you should be doing as a matter of course, regardless of whether you're using AI. And I think there are probably a couple of areas that we can add to that response from my perspective. One is around vendor management, which Aida didn't mention. Most of the AI solutions and every other software solution that most people use is provided by an external vendor. So you need to be making sure that it's not just you who addresses those potential threats inside your own infrastructure. You need to be conducting proper risk assessments and reviews with those vendors that you engage with. And I think AI models can often be seen as black boxes. Nobody outside of the developers really understand exactly how they work. And you don't really know who is processing that data on your behalf and whether they're acting with integrity or not, unless you go through those kind of strict governance and security processes. And I think there's one other interesting element that wasn't discussed, and that's employee training. I think generally most people acknowledge one of the weakest areas relating to cybersecurity is human error. And kind of link back to the previous points around the fear of AI. You need to be training your employees on its use and the ethical and legal implications. And you can use, I saw an interesting example earlier, you can use AI to provide some of that employee training. Some really, really fascinating solutions that will do things like virtual reality interactions to provide immersive training for your employees is quite an advancement, I think.
There's certainly early conversations within the hospitality sector of hoteliers looking to maybe employ a sort of AI head or a data scientist. I think that is that early training and that early, I suppose, broadening of staff roles within the sector is definitely starting to happen.
Yeah, and I think we'll see that more and more. And somebody asked me recently what I thought the biggest advancements and changes to AI over the next couple of years would be, and I would say it's almost impossible to predict what those advancements would look like in 2 years' time. But I certainly think one of the biggest changes we'll see is an increase in legislation and governance requirements, legal requirements in the use of AI. I think that will have a significant impact on what we're able to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ian. David, Nico, if either of you would like to come in at any point, please just virtually raise your hand. Nico, I can see your hand is already raised. Over to you.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to ask me twice. I know that David would surely want to comment on this, but so I had my actual hand on my virtual hand ready to go. No, I think the point that Ian made about training is incredibly important. Of course, I'm an academic, so that hits very close to home. We have pivoted everything that we do at my institute towards using AI, but in a responsible way. Interestingly, the vast majority of the dangers that people talk about when they talk about AI are not AI specific, they're internet specific. So, in theory, you could share sensitive data over email. The reason you don't is because you know how to avoid that, and you are extra careful when you send sensitive information over email. So that the employee training is incredibly important. One point that I wanted to add on the back of what Ian said was there are going to be changes that relate to regulations of how to use AI, not just in terms of limiting how AI should be used, but also in terms of requiring that AI should be used for certain things. We have already seen regulators start using AI to increase the regulatory scrutiny, for example, in the financial sector. And if you do this well, it can be incredibly helpful. So there will be changes when it comes to legislation, both that prevent using AI in certain ways, but also that encourage or require using AI in other ways. But I think I also completely agree. It's impossible to predict where the technology is going. And this is why it's so exciting. My wife is also an academic and AI engineer, and she's been working on technology for a very long time. And the changes that we see at the moment, nobody saw this coming. It's incredible that the large language models and generative AI that we have today works the way it works. Nobody expected it to be this good at this convincing. So yeah, it's exciting to wait and see what happens next.
Thank you, Nico. I'm now going to hand over to George to lead the second part of this webinar, and George is going to focus more on the real estate industry. So George, thanks for your patience, and back over to you.
Thanks, Ella. Yeah, this is fascinating. And as you say, I'm going to broaden conversation out slightly from hospitality to talk more about the built environment and real estate. So Aida, my first question to you: what is the role of AI in building design and architecture, and how can we avoid buildings becoming generic due to AI's influence?
The role of AI in building design and architecture is transforming how architects and designers approach projects. AI can analyze vast amounts of data to suggest optimized layouts, materials, and structural systems, leading to more efficient designs. It also allows architects to simulate various environmental factors, enhancing the building's performance from the design phase. However, to avoid buildings becoming generic due to AI's influence, it is essential to maintain a balance between AI-driven efficiency and human creativity. Architects should use AI as a tool to enhance their vision rather than replace it, ensuring that each project retains its unique cultural, historical, and artistic context.
That was something of a politician's answer, I felt like. Nico, what do you think about this? Presumably this is something that at the Bartlett, this is a topic of conversation. What's your take?
I think, honestly, George, I think it's an unfair question, because there is good research that shows that when we compare outputs generated by humans to outputs generated by AI, humans rate AI as more creative. So when you say, buildings can become generic, I don't think they will become more generic because AI is going to help design them. I think they're going to become more creative, more generic, less generic, and sort of more diverse, just because of how AI works. So I think the answer is neither here nor there, because we could have a very philosophical debate about what true creativity really is. You should not have that debate with an economist like myself, but the research that we have seen, when humans try to judge what's creative, innovative, or beautiful when it comes to design, it looks like AI beats humans. So of course, it's really hard to measure those things. So you could argue about the methodology, But at the end of the day, I don't think we are in any danger of having that effect. The industry, when it comes to architecture, it's a really brutal, difficult, hard profession, and I think AI can only help people within that industry. So I think it's going to be a really positive development, and people that enjoy the built environment can only benefit. And it's going to be a while before AI is making autonomous decisions. So we're talking about augmenting rather than automating, and I think it's a good thing.
Do you know, Nico, the extent to which architectural practices and perhaps architectural students are using AI already?
So that depends on the task, but yes, they are using it, and I wouldn't worry about whether they are using it or not, because they're all using it to some extent. The real question is, are they using it the right way? Are they using it efficiently? And are they using it in sort of the most productive way? Because that's the thing I worry about. Most of the people I have spoken to, especially the students, have used ChatGPT for one thing or another. The vast majority of them have not used any other well-developed tool that they should be using. So it's the way they use it that I'm concerned about, rather than whether they use it or not.
Ian, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I think I agree completely with Nico around the creativity debates. I look around the local area where I live, and it's very obvious to see which there are only a handful of architects around, but you can see which architects designed which buildings very, very clearly. So I think people have preference, and looking at creativity, it's always personal preference. And I think AI enables people like architects and designers to look at a much wider range of options very, very quickly. So I think it can give you a lot more choice. But I think one of the big areas where AI can enhance the building design and architecture process is more around looking at those design decisions, sustainability, life cycle assessments. You can use parametric design to look at a whole range of different variables, from spatial requirements, environmental factors, and produce many different design possibilities, and almost look at building performance simulators to look at the different options, from insurance and insulation and ventilation and natural lighting, to see even when things like orientation to achieve maximum efficiency from things like solar panels. I think there are a lot of very lower level detailed items that AI processes can certainly help with the design process.
Yeah. We'll ask Aida specifically about how AI can be used to enhance buildings' efficiency, energy performance, and so on shortly. But yeah, it's definitely a seriously important use case going forward, no doubt about that. Okay, let's move on and talk a bit about real estate investment. So my next question for you, Aida, is what are the uses for AI in property investment decisions and strategies?
In property investment, AI can significantly improve decision-making and strategy formulation. By analyzing trends, property values, market demand, and demographic data, AI models can provide investors with accurate insights into potential risks and returns. AI tools can also assist in portfolio management by identifying underperforming assets or growth opportunities, enabling more informed, data-driven decisions. Additionally, AI can forecast future market conditions, helping investors adapt their strategies to maximize profits while minimizing risks in volatile markets.
All right, thank you. David, did you want to comment on that one?
Well, look, I mean, the old adage in the real estate industry, right, of location, location, location. And data informs, and certainly, computing tools and the ability to access broad data sets could certainly inform decision making, can certainly create insights that may otherwise not be known. But at the same time, I also think that there is an intuition associated with needs that real estate investors or related, industry participants would say they're not going to give up on that sort of secret knowledge, that special insight that they have. So I think you could have a rational, data-driven, objective assessment that this is a location that is well placed for a certain type of investment. And I'm sure that many investments that were purely data-driven in that sense will fail. I suspect that we're still going to see tribal knowledge being very important, particularly as it relates to investment decisions. Now, if we could start encoding that tribal knowledge, because again, investment decisions aren't just made by data, then that might become a very interesting learning set for a language model. I'm not sure how you procure such data, but it could be an interesting base.
Yeah. Nick, I remember hearing you present, and one of the things which struck me was how incredibly efficient AI can be in helping people save time and take away some of the manual stuff. So it's a great way to allow investors to analyze data to help them make their own personal decision. I think that's potentially the way it's going to work.
No, absolutely, and that's what I wanted to say is I agree with David that there is a lot of information that is never going to be recorded, and therefore AI has no access to it. And therefore, I think that the way AI is going to help with investment is they will keep doing the same things they've always been doing. They will just start doing them faster and more efficiently. And this is what we see in the industry already, a large chunk of the use cases that we have seen so far, where people in the investment industry deploying them either to analyze the data faster, well, three areas really. Things that they knew they should be doing, but they didn't have time. Things that they didn't know how to do, but they knew they should be doing. And now they can do things that they didn't even know they should have been doing all along. But now AI tells them, hey, maybe you should look into this. And sort of this is mostly just improving operational efficiency, which in investment goes a long way. But I agree with David, when the thing that makes or breaks an investment is the stuff that you know but nobody else does, then there's going to be a long time before AI can have access to that, unless it's an insight that is derived from data that AI has, but nobody else has looked at.
Ian, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there's one thing. I think we focus a lot on when to make investments, when to purchase, where to purchase, those kinds of things. But one thing that's often overlooked, and I think AI can really help on this kind of thing, is exit strategies. We can look at it in exactly the same way, looking at the same type of data to predict the optimal time to sell a property and maximize returns. Can be used to help to generate that full exit strategy. So not just looking at when to sell, but how do you sell, who do you sell to, should you convert a commercial property to residential, those types of decisions. But I think, and Aida used a very pertinent phrase, insights into potential risks. And I think that's exactly it. And Nico and David have said the same thing. This is providing insights and providing data, but I think those decisions will still ultimately be made by humans.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Okay, so my final question to Aida is pertaining to a topic that we've already touched on. How can AI be used to make buildings in the living sector and the wider real estate industry more energy efficient and sustainable?
In the living sector, AI plays a pivotal role in enhancing energy efficiency and sustainability. Smart building systems powered by AI can monitor energy usage in real time and adjust heating, cooling, and lighting according to occupancy and external conditions, reducing energy waste. AI can also optimize the integration of renewable energy sources, such as solar panels, by predicting energy demands and weather patterns. Furthermore, predictive maintenance systems can identify and address inefficiencies in building infrastructure, ensuring that equipment operates at peak performance while extending its lifespan, contributing to both sustainability and cost savings.
Ian, did you want to comment on that? It's actually not quite as comprehensive as your answer. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very, very high level answer and covers a couple of areas that we've mentioned already. And I think smart energy management is certainly one of them. And we're not talking about just adding a smart meter or putting smart thermostats on your radiators. So at MRO, we actually implemented a smart energy solution in our UK offices last year and started to track energy usage and compared that with occupancy rates. We were tracking occupancy through a separate solution. We were monitoring things like how many people are on each floor of the building. Now that solution didn't make any automatic adjustments, but it highlighted very, very quickly a number of recommendations. And we were identifying things like the heating was being used at the weekend when there was no one there, or on certain days, every floor of the building was occupied by only a couple of people, and that meant every floor had the heating or the air conditioning on, depending on the time of the year. Mainly because people have their preferred desks. They walk in and they sit at the same place every day. So we were able to optimize not just the active times of those various systems, but the occupancy behaviours of our staff. And the results were very obvious. I think we saved in excess of £100,000 in the first year alone after we rolled that out. Predictive maintenance is an interesting one, and I think there's an area of predictive maintenance that's not been highlighted in Aida's response, which is a lot of the time you'll be engaged with third-party FM providers, and the efficiency of those providers can feed into your efficiency calculations. If they're able to tap into your data and look at predicting when things will break down, then that results in less traveling, it results in less repeat visits, which in turn has carbon emissions reductions. And I think one area that wasn't highlighted at all in the response is on the resident side of things and changes in resident behaviour. You start to collect more and more data about energy consumption across residential units. You can use AI to generate a very specific range of feedback and suggestions, personalised to individual residents on how they can make their properties more energy efficient. And that's not just benefiting you and the sort of reporting on carbon emissions and those kinds of things that you can do. It has the environmental benefit, but also has a tangible cost saving to the residents as well. So you get an increase in customer satisfaction almost from your residents.
David, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think a pattern has emerged, right, through the whole of this conversation with Aida, which is she's giving us very broad, very generic responses, which are not contextually aware. And so I think if you were to ask one of us directly, you know, there's a whole bunch of additional information we would probably want to have before giving you an answer. And specifically as it relates to this question, you're going to be concerned about the location of the property. You're going to be concerned about whether it's a new build or an existing property. You're going to be concerned about the budget. You're going to be concerned about the propensity of the owner to invest in solutions. And all of that sort of missing, you know, from Aida's response. Going back to the more sort of generic slant that she took, you know, I think there was no consideration at all about maybe swapping out some of the existing materials in the property. Maybe it has old-fashioned windows that leak a lot of heat or energy and so forth. Replace it, investing in new elements to the property could certainly change outcomes. And there's, you know, and there's also, you know, consideration of the overall, you know, materials, the design of the property and so forth. And again, we didn't hear anything really related to that. But as I say, there seems to be a consistent theme across the board, which is Aida just doesn't have context or doesn't sort of come back to us with clarifying questions and then fires off fairly dogmatic responses. You must do, you should do, this is the answer. And I think that's been consistent today.
Yeah, I guess in Aida's defense, we have given her pretty open-ended questions rather than specific questions, but I guess that reinforces that what AI gives you is only going to be as good as the prompts that you give it, you know, the better and the more detailed.
I think that's that's what we all heard at the beginning of the Gen AI sort of movement, was we're all actually going to get better at asking smarter questions. I'm not sure we've learned that skill yet, but it certainly is a phrase that I've heard multiple times.
Ian, your hand was up there. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think David made some very, very good points there, and Aida has demonstrated very effectively that an AI engine will try to answer the question that is asked without any kind of clarification or going back. And I think the human elements of things, we know as human beings, somebody asks us a question, if we need more answers to or more information to answer that question effectively, we'll have a conversation and we'll ask for clarity. And I think that's where AI will hopefully start to evolve more, and not just directly try to answer every question as soon as it's asked, but actually have more of that conversational style.
Yeah. Nico, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously, as we've said, this is very early days, and I think it's the first time this has been tried on the webinar. But I predict that we'll get better at doing this, and consequently, we'll get better answers from whichever AI we use.
No, I think you're right, but both David and Ian made the point about context being everything for AI. It can give really, really good answers as long as you are very specific. It doesn't have the context that all of us have when we give these answers about the audience, about the type of the webinar. So as Ian said, it's just trying to answer the question that has been asked in the context that it understands. If you ask better questions, as David said, you will get better answers. So David, to give you some comfort, we have actually started teaching our students how to ask better questions, and we have developed courses around this. So this is ongoing. We are getting better, and I know progress is slow, as it always is with academia. But I promise you, we're making a lot of progress, and it's exciting to watch students get really, really good at this and just discover how much value they can extract. My final point, I think, would be that a lot of people tell me that AI is not useful because they got it to say something stupid. And look, you can get a human to say something stupid, you can get me to say something stupid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're useless, right? So as long as you know how to get some value out of myself or other humans that can sometimes say something stupid, you're in a good place. And it's the same with AI.
Yeah. Nico, I just want to stay with you for a second. So we've got a question here from the audience, and it's quite an interesting one. And I think this is referring to guest-facing or customer-facing chatbots. And this is a question from Graham Hardiman, who says, in a similar way to how Aida's expectation is set, should we find alternative characteristics other than human identities for chatbots, so the expectation level of the user is not set so high? What's your take on that, Nico?
Well, so the question is assuming that AI would perform not as well as a human would. Whereas I would assume that in some ways it would outperform humans, whereas in other ways it would underperform. So I guess in terms of the sort of the engaging way of speaking, there is still room for improvement when it comes to AI. But there are things that AI does much better than a human. So I don't know if lowering the expectation is the right way to ask the question, but sort of changing the expectations, I think yes, because I think we should interact with AI differently than we interact with humans, because it's a tool that works in a certain way, and understanding how it works, what it can do and what it can't do, is incredibly important. So just the idea of knowing what AI will do well and what it won't do is going to be an incredibly valuable skill or knowledge going forward, just because understanding that it's not a database that you can just search using natural language will eliminate a lot of the use cases that people normally start with.
Thanks, Nico. David, did you want to come in on that quickly, and then we'll better wrap up?
Yeah, just a really short point. I think the question in a way is flawed, because the customer's expectation is, I have a need and I'm looking to the organization that I'm reaching out to satisfy my need. And so it's important that the organization decides, is this a need that can be satisfied by technology, or AI, or does it need to be satisfied in a different way? The consumer, the customer, the guest doesn't need to change their expectations. They've got a problem, an issue, an opportunity that they want solved for. And as a service provider, I think it's important that we make sure we're putting the right capabilities in front of our customers to keep them happy and address their needs.
Thank you, David. All right, thanks everyone. That was fascinating. I really enjoyed that, and I think we will definitely be looking to do this again and make it better next time. But I think it was a really enlightening and illuminating first start. So thanks very much, everyone. Just going to show a few slides before we wrap up, just to round things up. So our next webinar in the Urban Living series is on Friday, October the 18th. And we are going to be talking about the living sector's wish list from the new government. The link to register for that is in the chat. If you'd like to work with us at IHM on any of our digital offers or our in-person events, please do get in touch with my colleague Henry, whose details are on the screen and also in the chat. We have 3 in-person events coming up later in the month. They're all half-day events themed around different asset classes. The first about senior living, the second is build to rent, and the third is around hotels and hospitality. You can see a link in the chat to get your tickets for those events. It'd be good to see you there. And finally, I just wanted to say thank you and give the last word to Aida.
All that's left to say is a huge thank you to our incredible expert speakers for sharing their insights today, and to our hosts, George and Eloise. A special thanks as well to our sponsor, MRI Software, for their support. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in to today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends, and opinions across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments, and low-cost digital content. And so, they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 52,500 in our email database across all sectors, and over 68,000 across our social channels. Everything we do challenges the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us, and we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, and meet with IHM. Connect with us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.